Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Depends on wherever you are in the world. This is Uncle Timo, and I'm starting a new series. It's going to be IL-2 1946 modded with the CUP mode, CUP mode, which is Community Update Patch. Game is completely modded. I play it single player. I don't play it in hyper lobby. I play it versus AI, and what's more important, with AI. This is an old game. I think it was released originally in 2001. Last real huge DLC was something like 2006. It had two or three DLC. The last one was EL2 1946. Why do I think in 2016, why is this game still worth playing? Well, this is the only game where you're gonna get historicity, and it's a bit I feel kind of strange saying it, but let me explain what I mean by this completely made-up word, I believe, right on the spur of the moment. Historicity is the immersion. When you play modern multiplayer games, such as War Thunder or IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad and soon IL-2 Battle of Moscow, well, you are a lone wolf. You fly maybe with a friend, if you're lucky, maybe with two or three, but you fly usually alone. So you fly your fighter or your bomber on a one-man mission or one crew mission, one airplane mission to do stuff. That's not how it worked in World War II. Whole squadrons flew, or at the least a pair, usually four airplanes, or three, at the minimum. So there is no teamwork in War Thunder. There is no teamwork in IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad. Really, there is no immersion. In this game, you are going to hear Russian and German voices. I will start actually a new campaign, regardless of the German name. I use this for my Polish Let's Play of this game, but I will do an English-speaking one now. I will do a Russian, actually Soviet campaign. So this is going to be an introduction, and let's do a quick overview of the controls. Trim. If you have never flown, aircraft, especially in World War II, which I imagine very few of you did, but if you've never flown it in a simulator, not realistic battles in War Thunder, but simulator, you have no idea that in front of the airplane or on the left and right side, there are those things called, well, I will let you figure out what they're called, but they spin. And they spin from one side to the next. And they give a force. The whole airplane is reacting to their spin. And so a fighter airplane of this era pulls to one side. Usually the side that it pulls to is left. So if you start your airplane, this is not a jet aircraft, this is a World War II era fighter, it will pull to the left. Also, it will bob up and down because of the way the engine works, the way the spinner works. So the trim is, you can trim your aircraft so that you can counter force the spin of the airplane. Okay. You can react to it, and you can trim it so without touching the joystick, you will fly more or less straight. You can only trim it. You can trim it as much as you want. Well, depending on the historical aircraft. For example, the German aircraft do not have left to right, which is rudder trim. They have up and down, which is the elevator. So you have to kind of counteract it. What happened in World War II was the German airplanes, Messerschmitt 109s, were set on the airfield for specific speed. Otherwise, if you were not flying that specific speed, you had to use the rudder, not the trim rudder, not the trim rudder, but the actual rudder, and counteract it all the time as you flew. So here are my controls. I set up rudder and elevator, which is basically arrows up and down, left and right. Engine is I. Use Logitech Extreme Pro 3D joystick, which is very cheap, very affordable, and it has lots of buttons. And what's important also, it has this little thingamajig which you can push forward or back, which controls the throttle, which you can set to control the throttle. Actually, it's the way the game works out of the box. It was set up so I didn't have to actually set it to control the throttle that way. Prop pitch. This is the little thing that spins in the front of the airplane. Depending on the pitch or the angle that we set it to, it's going to act differently. When we are diving from up above all the way down, if you want to speed up our dive, which we do if we're chasing somebody, we want to decrease the pitch. And depending on the altitude, we also want to mess with the pitch. Mixture. Increase and decrease mixture. I have 0 and 9 here on the keyboard. This is fuel. This is basically the pilot regulates what kind of fuel he wants to be in that airplane for the engine to use. Excuse me. A richer mixture works better. However, due to experience, when I set the mixture at the start to too rich, the engine choked and died during takeoff. So you have to find the sweet spot, and I can do some reading, and I should do some reading on what mixtures to use and what prop pitch to use, but especially mixture. At what altitudes. Magnetos I never use. Fighters have them, I never use them. Flaps, these are to help you maneuver, and when you go all the way down, they help you land by basically those little, if you're familiar with racing cars, they have those little winglets on the back to help you with the airflow. Same idea here. Gear up and down is G. But what is this? Raise gear manually and lower gear manually. Well, some airplanes in this era do not have pneumatic gear, so you have to use your hand as a pilot, well in this case your keyboard key, as a pilot to manually raise it, and you basically don't push a button, you have to do a specific action repeatedly to raise that gear. Radiator, which is call or armor flaps, this is for the radiator basically. Don't let this mistake you. This is for opening and closing the radiator. You want to close the radiator when you're in battle. It's better aerodynamics. However, engine overheats a lot depending on the temperature outside. If you're flying in the desert or in the Russian summer, you might want to keep it open until you hit the battle. Wheel brakes, well, self-explanatory. Jets and drop tanks, I have it to shift T. Self-explanatory, when we have extra fuel underneath our airplane, we're gonna drop it. Wing fold is for airplanes that are on the aircraft carrier. Some aircraft wings fold, so for easier storage on the aircraft carrier basically. Same with arresting hook, this is for aircraft carrier, we're not going to use it, we're going to fly Soviets. Chocks is very good to use on the aircraft carrier. It's actually also good to use when you're flying on land. Why is that? Well, because your Uncle Timo repeatedly has a habit of pushing the throttle when he wants to scratch his nose or when he makes sudden movements next to the joystick. So when you're on the takeoff, when you're starting the mission and you're trying to take off, and there are people in front of you, well, this could lead to unforeseen circumstances, which is mitigated by pressing C, putting the chocks in. Chocks are the stuff, little wooden blocks you put in front of the wheels. Basically, your plane is not going anywhere no matter how much throttle you give it. So that's actually good to use if you're a noob like Uncle Timo here, when you're starting and during the takeoff. Open and close canopy, self-explanatory. I have weapons set up to joystick button 1 and 2, but weapon 1 and 2 is basically, usually one is heavier machine gun or cannon, and the second button is, well actually otherwise. First weapon is usually machine guns or lighter cannons, and the second button is heavier cannon. So for example, in Messerschmitt 109s, the first button is usually the MGs, the machine guns, and the second button is your cannon. I use control also to fire both of them at the same time when I'm close to the enemy, and I found that when one hand is left hand is on the control and right hand is on the joystick, I have better results, because when I use the buttons on the joystick, I kind of jerk the joystick, and this is not good. Space and alt are basically for rockets and bombs when your airplane is equipped with different configurations of weapons. For example, when you're flying IL-2, you might have both weapons and bombs, so you might want to hit space and alt for those. Chaff flares, that's stuff for cap mode. It's basically when you have installed your airplanes which are more modern, such as jet fighters like F-16 and stuff like that. I do not have it installed. I am more of a World War II guy. Gunsight, bombsight controls, that's for the bombers. I will try to do a bomber campaign later. Right now I'm going to concentrate on Soviet fighters. Views, I'm going to keep the views in the campaign for my enjoyment and yours. I'm going to keep those, allow views from outside the airplane basically and see enemy airplanes and our airplanes for a better experience for everybody. But wide view is basically, I use it on my joystick on my left side. Wide view, normal view, and gun sight view. Well, farther, closer, and closest. You will see this will make, well, it probably makes sense right now, but it will really make sense when I press it when I'm in the game itself. Cockpit view, I always keep the cockpit on. I want that immersion. I don't want to fly with X-Wing Star Wars fighter with no cockpit. These are for the views for the enemies, so I basically use Shift and Alt for enemies because it used to be Control, and obviously I set Control on my configuration to firing weapons 1 and weapon 2, so I don't want to use Control and different F1 through F2, F3, F4, etc. to switch the views and fire my, ordnance. Snap view, and mess with pan view is if you don't have head tracker, stuff like that. Okay, miscellaneous, actually communications, tab. Yes, it's not a multiplayer, but you will communicate with your squadron. When you're lower level, no, that's not milk, lower rank, you will press tab and call out enemy fighters and airplanes to inform your guys, hey guys, I know I'm just a lowly, the lowest of the low, I just started the squadron, but here are enemy fighters, and they will acknowledge you saying, yes, Roger, we see them, we're gonna start our attack. When you climb in rank, if you climb in rank, you survive your missions and you climb rank and you start to be a leader of first your another airplane. You're gonna make it, a second airplane. You're gonna be a pair, then a 4 airplane swarm. I don't know what it's called in Russian. I apologize. Tell me please what it's called in Russian. Or a Vic. Then you're gonna be the leader of half a squadron, then the whole squadron. You will give commands to your guys. Hey, go here, go there. Attack them, attack these targets, attack ground targets, attack bombers only, attack fighters only, etc., etc. Ground targets, for example, you can call to your squadron and tell them, hey, attack only aircraft, AAA defenses, or suppress air defenses before you start the mission, before you start bombing other stuff. So there's strategy involved here in command too. Autopilot is a very good thing in this game. You can fly the whole mission on autopilot. When you're on the tarmac, when you're doing takeoff, you can basically press A, and just to see how the game works, if you're totally new, I recommend doing that actually. Just press A on the beginning, so you will be, the computer will fly the plane for you. And when you see the enemy, not enemy, when you see the guy in front of you starting up, and he's taking off, and he's took off, do a tab, then 9 for ground control, and then I believe 5 for takeoff, or 4 for takeoff, I don't remember now, I think 5. So it's tab 9 and 5, and ask for request for permission for takeoff, and they will say in the language of your country, with Germany, Poland, Russia, or France, whatever, there's multiple languages here. They will say yes, permission granted, and then the computer will start the airplane on the tarmac, and it will fly the mission itself. It will attack targets, it will follow the commands of the leader of the flight, of the squadron, or however many you have in the air at the time. That's another thing, is this game has whole squadrons in the game. And why do I play this game as opposed to IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad or War Thunder? Well, You're not Rambo. You're part of a. You're just a cog in the machine. Even if you become a squadron commander, the CEO of the squadron, well, there's other airplanes in the air from your side, not to mention the enemy, but from your side. There are airplanes which are observation airplanes. There are bombers. There are Yabos, which are the Sturmoviks, which are ground attack. They do their own battle missions. They may or may not have anything to do with your mission. So they're all over the map. And you will see, during takeoff, you might see as many as 16 airplanes starting for the mission. Beat that, War Thunder or IL-2 BOS, or BS actually. When you fly in those multiplayer, yes, you're fighting against other players, but when you're flying all alone by yourself, scanning the sky with nobody covering you, and it gets. That's not how War II pilots flew. That's not what air combat was all about. So anyway, autopilot is set for A, obviously. Level autopilot is for bombers. I will explain that later. Bailout, hopefully we'll never use it, but it's Shift E. It used to be Control E, changed. Reticle dimmer is something wacky. Some, especially German fighters and maybe Americans later in the war, have this dimmer. If you're flying against the sun or you're blinded, you can dim your sight. Theory sounds good. Practice, eh. Cockpit lights. When you're flying at night, and during my German campaign, which is 100% in Polish, I flew at night, which was very, very hairy. You can click L and the cockpit will light up. All the little instruments will light up for to ease seeing them. Navigation lights, computer doesn't care about them, but they're super cool, especially in this mode. Landing light, some airplanes, I think those are for bombers. Wingtip smoke, I never use it. Map and full screen map, obviously very useful. Beacons I never use, because I use autopilot because I'm lazy. Yes, I know. There goes immersion. Well, it's still better immersion than War Thunder, trust me. That's about it. So, next video, we are going to set the mission and fly it. Hopefully there will be some interest in this. We'll try to do a historic overview of planes during every mission. Well, not during, but after every mission, I will go to the objects. And we will see what airplanes, and as you can see, the mod added a crap load of airplanes here for both sides, both Axis and Allies, which are flyable. So those without text are obviously added by the mod. So yeah, there are a ton of airplanes. And I will go here and I will actually explain about the certain airplane that we meet in combat and that we fly, and what they're all about, what their characteristics were, and how to fly them, and advantages and disadvantages, which actually this game will help me with, because the descriptions are pretty damn good here. Okay, next video, we're gonna set up the actual campaign. We're not gonna change the name, because one last thing I want to explain is, if you change the pilot, the controls for that pilot change, and you have to go to controls and change everything from default. So it's best to have just one pilot for fighter and one pilot for possibly a bomber, strategic bomber, and one for something like a Sturmovik or a Stuka lighter ground attacker. So usually 3 pilots, set them up for yourselves. This is my fighter. Forget the German here. We're just going to use that one because the controls for that one are set for the fighters. And we're going to go to pilot career and do our Soviet campaign. See you next video.